Assalamu alaikum. This is Huma Islam. Today's topic is migration to Medina. It occurred in 622 CE, Common Era. This is it's from P1, chapter number 3. Event. Many Muslims had left for Medina after the pledges of Aqaba. Ali, Abu Bakr and the Prophet ﷺ were left to leave. Ali, Abu Bakr and the Prophet ﷺ were left to leave. The Quraysh didn't want the Prophet to leave due to it becoming a threat to their homeland if the Muslims were strengthened by the Aus and the Khazraj tribe. Now the Quraysh didn't want Muhammad ﷺ to go. Why? Because they wanted to persecute him. They tried their level best to assassinate him. Why? So that this growing religion would not affect their prestige. And if the Prophet ﷺ would go to Medina, then naturally he would be helped by the Aus and the Khazraj tribes, and they didn't want that. The Quraysh held a meeting at Darul Nadwa that one leader from each tribe will assassinate the Prophet ﷺ, so the Banu Hashim will not be able to avenge the murder from 10 tribes. The Quraysh held a meeting at Darul Nadwa that one leader from each tribe. Why did they plan for one leader from each tribe? Because if one person would kill, then the Banu Hashim would easily, kill that person or take revenge from that tribe. But if 10 tribes were involved in one killing, then the Banu Hashim would never ever be able to compete with 10 tribes. So, it could be a cover-up. The Prophet informed by Wahi. The Prophet was informed by Wahi about this plot. And remember, you can add this into your answers. If you get a question about the migration of the Prophet ﷺ, you will start from where they are plotting to kill the Prophet ﷺ, and then the Prophet is being given information by Wahi. And remember, when the disbelievers were conspiring against you to hold you as captive or kill you or expel you, they were planning, and Allah was planning, and Allah is the best planner. Remember, you're supposed to add this as it is to score an 8 and a 10, 8 to 10. If you just add it, by just guessing what was in the verse, then you'll score near about 7 or 8. The Prophet asked Ali to sleep in his bed. And why do you think the Prophet asked Ali to sleep in his bed? One thing is that he was a son of Abu Talib, and remember, Abu Talib was the respected chief of his tribe, right? And if somebody else was laying in his bed, the people who had come to kill would have killed that person just in anger. But because Ali was there, when they saw Ali, it was impossible that they would ever touch Ali because he was the son of Abu Talib. So can you see the wisdom behind even putting Ali in his bed? That, okay, nobody is going to attack him. And, because if it was somebody else, that would have been risking their life. And then Hazrat Ali was told to join the Prophet ﷺ after returning the imanats, the possessions that the Prophet kept of people. Imagine, they were so against him, but they still kept their valuables with the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet left his home with no one knowing, even though they had it under siege. In other words, the Prophet ﷺ left in the middle of the night. They were all, 10 different people from different tribes were there ready to assassinate him. They knew that he's going to come out for the Fajr prayer. So they were standing there to attack, but nobody even found out. The Prophet recited, وَجَعَلْنَا مِن بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ سَدًّا وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ سَدًّا فَأَغْشَيْنَاهُمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُبْصِرُونَ. This is the verse from Surah Yasin, verse number 9, and have placed a barrier before them. And we have placed a barrier before them and a barrier behind them, and covered them all up so they failed to see the truth. In other words, they couldn't see because this was a miracle performed by Allah. And left home by blowing sand from his hand. He was reciting this verse, and he had a handful of sand. He blew on it, and nobody could see him. It was a miracle. The Prophet met Abu Bakr at his home. Remember, he had already told him to stay ready because he can come any day to leave. At his home, who had already prepared 2 horses for them. They left. They left in the middle of the night and reached the cave of Thor, which was 5 miles from Mecca before Fajr, right? In the morning, when the Prophet didn't come out for the Salah, for the Fajr Salah, the Meccans charged in, furious, seeing Ali in the bed. They were really, really angry to see Ali, but they didn't bear harming him because because he was a tribal leader's son. A reward of 100 camels was announced for the capture of Muhammad, dead or alive. Now, many went searching for the Prophet ﷺ. Some people reached even the mouth of the cave. The incident is mentioned in the Quran. It does not matter if you believers do not support him, for Allah did in fact support him when the disbelievers drove him out of Makkah, and he was only one of two. While they both were in the cave, he reassured his companion, "Do not worry, Allah is certainly with us." So Allah sent down his serenity upon the Prophet, supported him with the forces you believers did not see, and made the word of the disbelievers lowest, while the word of Allah is supreme, and Allah is almighty, all wise. The companion of the cave, who is it? It's Hazrat Abu Bakr. I was in the company of the Prophet in the cave, and on seeing the traces of the pagans, I said, "O Allah's Messenger, if one of them pagans should lift up his foot, he will see us." He said, "What do you think of the two, whose the third is Allah?" What do you think of two, the third of whom is Allah? In other words, Hazrat Abu Bakr mentioned his, fear about what is going to happen. And the Prophet said, "You're just seeing two people. What do you think about the two whose third is Allah?" In other words, Allah is with us. He's going to save us. The miracles that occurred, how Allah helped, the cave was covered with cobwebs. And by looking at the cobweb, a huge cobweb, nobody could guess that anybody could have gone inside because, it takes ages for a spider to, knit its cobweb. And then there was a pigeon's nest right at the mouth of the cave also. Naturally, if somebody would have gone in, the pigeon's nest would have been disturbed. So they totally did not even consider looking into the cave. The Prophet stayed in the cave for 3 days. Asma bint Abu Bakr brought food for them. Abdullah brought news of the Quraysh. Amr bin Fuhaira tended the flock of goats near the cave during the day and supplied them with fresh milk in the night. After 3 days, the search was called off. Now, these, like when you're getting a question, you're going to mention all of these things. These things are important. The Prophet consoling Hazrat Abu Bakr. There's another narration in which it is told that Hazrat Abu Bakr first went into the cave, cleaned it, filled all the holes with stones, and then there was one place where he could not fill it with a stone. So what did he do? He put his foot there, and then he was stung by some insect, and then the Prophet also applied his saliva. You can add these things into your work, your 10-mark answer. And Asma Abu Bakr bint Abu Bakr coming with food, Abdullah bin Abu Bakr coming with news of the Quraysh, and the one who was providing them with milk. These things should be mentioned in your answer. Now, there's an incident about Suraqah bin Malik. One individual, Suraqah ibn Malik, had received news of the whereabouts of the Prophet ﷺ and slipped away with his weapons in hope of claiming this bounty for himself. Suraqah had only just caught up to the Prophet when his horse suddenly became stuck in the ground. It is said that the sand was sucking the horse inside. He was determined to catch the Prophet, and each time he mounted his horse, the same strange occurrence would happen. This led Suraqah to realize that he was following a great individual, and he gave up his pursuit. In other words, because his animal could not move, could not budge, he realized that this is no normal person. This person is being helped miraculously. Stop at Quba. The Prophet arrived at Quba with Hazrat Abu Bakr, later joined by Hazrat Ali, because Hazrat Ali had to give back the things that the Qurayshis and the Meccan people's possessions. And then Hazrat Ali joined them at Quba. They built a mosque at Quba. Then it's mentioned in the Quran. Masjid al-Quba is also mentioned in the Quran. Certainly a mosque founded on righteousness from the first day is more worthy of your prayers in it. In it are men who love to be purified, and Allah loves those who purify themselves. It is said that these people, when Allah mentioned this, the Prophet asked that, how do you purify yourselves? Because Allah has mentioned you that you are the best purifiers. And they said that we clean ourselves with, after going to the washroom, we clean ourselves with water. That's how we purify ourselves. So that was chosen for the Muslims too. On the Friday, they left Quba for Medina. They reach at the quarters of Banu Sulaim. The Prophet led the first Friday prayers and gave the first Friday sermon where? Not Masjid al-Nabi, not Masjid al-Quba, but the quarters of the Banu Sulaim. You must remember this. This is a part of the migration. You can't leave it. After the Friday prayers, they left for Medina. People, on seeing the Prophet, rejoiced and sang songs by beating the duff. Importance of the Hijrah. And another thing, when they saw them, it was a Jewish boy who first saw the Prophet ﷺ, completing the Jewish prophecy of the coming of the last Prophet. Now, importance of the Hijrah. Hijri calendar starts from the Hijrah, from the migration. A strong Muslim state evolved and changed conditions of Arabia. Muslims could pray publicly with no threat. First, remember, they were not allowed to pray in Masjid al-Haram. Muslims formed the majority of Medina now. Over there they were as a minority. Now in Medina they're a majority. Systematic preaching conducted in Sufa. Then, when Masjid al-Nabi was built, a platform called Sufa was created, and then people would focus their lives and dedicate their lives to studying. Laws of Muslims were finalized in Medina. Remember, in Mecca, all of the verses were about faith and Islamic concepts, aqaid, beliefs, and now it's time to implement laws. One nation evolved irrespective of color or creed. Creation of brotherhood bond. Remember when they went, the Prophet ﷺ created a brotherhood bond between the Ansar of Medina and the Muhajir of Makkah. First world constitution was formulated in Medina. It's called the Charter of Medina. It's the first ever world constitution. That's something to remember. Sometimes you're asked a question about what was the first, write about the constitution of Medina, and don't get stuck that which one is it. We're still talking about the Charter of Medina, Mithaq Medina. Prophet ﷺ declared head of state, politician, religious leader, and a commander. Thank you.